It began, as these things often do, with something deceptively small. A parcel. Plain. Unremarkable. It was waiting on the doorstep that morning, resting in the shadow of the iron gate, like a stray animal that had wandered too close. No courier had been seen, no footsteps traced in the dew. Just the box, positioned carefully, as though it had been delivered by invisible hands. At first glance, it carried a kind of antique aesthetic. Its cardboard was not modern, but heavy, fibrous, edged with a faint patina of time. Tied around it was a length of faded twine, rough to the touch, brittle in places, as though it had been handled too many times before. A wax seal, unbroken, pressed against the knot. Its emblem was unfamiliar, a circular crest of interlocking shapes, sharp and labyrinthine. Curiosity stirred like a restless wind. The rational mind suggested a mistake, a parcel meant for someone else, abandoned at the wrong door. But the other part, that darker, more reckless curiosity we try to suppress, whispered that it was meant for me. I carried it inside, its weight startling. Not heavy exactly, but dense, like carrying something that contained more than mere matter. Something unseen, pressed against the box from within, demanding to be acknowledged. On the table, beneath the dim light of a single lamp, I examined it closer. The seal seemed older than the paper itself, cracked slightly along its rim. Pressed into the wax was that strange crest again. But now, under the heat of the lamp, it seemed to shimmer faintly, as though the pattern shifted with every angle of light. The moment lingered, drawn out by a hesitation I could not name. There was no note, no handwriting, nothing to tie this box to the world I knew. And yet, it waited. With deliberate care, I slicked a blade beneath the twine and cut. The rope fell slack with a sigh. The seal crumbled. The lid creaked open. Inside, nestled in a bed of faded velvet, lay a single object, an antique pocket watch. Its casing was tarnished silver, etched with elaborate vines that curled and intertwined across its surface. At first, it was beautiful. But beauty, when held too long beneath the eye, begins to warp into unease. The vines looked less like foliage and more like something writhing, like serpents tangled in an embrace. The glass was cracked in a single line, splitting the face like a spar. Its hands, though frozen at an impossible hour, 13, seemed eager to move, as if trapped mid-motion. I felt my pulse quicken. And then, before I could process the meaning, something happened. The air in the room shifted. The lamp above flickered once, then steadied, though its light now seemed weaker, dimmer, as though it struggled against an unseen shadow. The watch ticked. Impossible. The hands were frozen, yet the sound echoed softly, just once, sharp, distinct, undeniable. Tick. I recoiled slightly, heart hammering. The silence that followed was suffocating, as though the room itself was listening. I should have closed the box, sealed it away, hidden it in the deepest drawer, and forgotten its existence. That would have been the sensible thing. But sense was already leaving me. Because, tucked beneath the velvet lining, hidden almost deliberately, was something else. A folded slip of paper, fragile and browned at the edges. I unfolded it carefully. The handwriting was old, scrawled in dark ink that had bled slightly into the page. It read, "Every object is a doorway. This is the first. Do not linger too long in its presence. More will follow." No signature, no explanation, just the words, cryptic, commanding, terrifying in their simplicity. I looked back at the watch. Its cracked glass glinted faintly, catching the dim light. For a moment, I could have sworn I saw something stir behind it, something moving, slow and deliberate, like a shadow waiting to step forward. And then, as if the house itself sighed, the clock on the wall struck once. Midnight. Only it was not midnight. The watch lay silent, yet its presence filled the room. I could feel it. An invitation. I barely slept that night. The pocket watch remained on the table, but I felt its presence long after I turned away. Every creak of the house seemed sharper, closer. The shadows stretched unnaturally long across the walls. And somewhere in the back of my mind, I thought I heard it, that faint, impossible ticking. When I finally drifted into sleep, it was not rest that followed. I dreamed of corridors. Endless branching halls lined with shelves, and on those shelves, objects, thousands of them, each resting in silence. A cracked porcelain doll with hollow eyes, a tarnished ring stained dark at the edges, a mirror shattered into 100 slivers that all reflected my face, but none of them blinked. In the center of the hall, a figure waited, shadowed, watching. Its hand hovered over a velvet box, identical to the one I had received. I woke with a jolt, my breath ragged. The watch lay where I had left it, silent, waiting. But now, beside it, there was something new. A small envelope. I hadn't placed it there. I knew that with the kind of certainty that chills the blood. The envelope was brittle, sealed with the same emblem as the first package. I broke it open. Inside were 3 folded pages, written in the same trembling ink as the slip from before. The first line caught my breath. To those who find these relics, you are now part of the collection. Each page seemed to be an entry, part of a journal, a record from a long-forgotten curator. The words were uneven, frantic, as if the writer feared running out of time. One page described an object called the music box of hollow pines. It spoke of a melody that soothed children into eternal silence, and of a girl who vanished the night it first played. Another page spoke of the portrait of Eleanora Vale. The artist had painted her eyes too perfectly, so perfectly that they seemed to move long after the canvas had dried. Those who lived with the portrait complained of being watched, until eventually, they too disappeared. The last page ended abruptly. The collector does not choose objects. The objects choose him. Each is a witness, each a vessel, each a fragment of something waiting to awaken. The ink trailed off mid-sentence, as though the writer had been interrupted. I swallowed hard. This wasn't random. This was deliberate. The watch was just the first, and now there would be more. That evening, as the sky darkened into a bruised twilight, I heard it. A sound, faint at first, threading through the walls of the house. Notes rising and falling, delicate, almost tender, yet wrong. A lullaby, slowed, warped, echoing in places where no instrument should have been playing. The melody drew me to the hallway, and there, at the foot of the door, lay another parcel. Smaller this time. Hands trembling, I brought it inside. Inside was exactly what the journal had warned me of. A small, ornate music box. Its surface was painted with chipped gold leaf, etched with faded floral patterns. The crank handle was bent slightly, as though it had resisted being turned. When I opened the lid, a porcelain ballerina twitched upright. Her arms were broken, but her painted smile remained, stretched too wide. And then the melody returned, clearer now. The very same tune I had heard in my dream. For a moment, I felt the air in the room shift colder. My breath fogged. And faintly, so faintly I thought I might be imagining it, I heard a child's laughter in the distance. I slammed the lid shut. But the sound didn't stop. But next day, it happened again. Another package, another object. This time, a portrait, framed in heavy oak, the canvas cracked with age. A woman stared from within it. Pale skin, dark hair pinned neatly back. Her eyes followed. No matter where I stood in the room, they shifted ever so slightly, locking onto me. I tested it. Step to the left, then the right. Always, those painted eyes adjusted. Slow, but undeniable. Pinned to the back of the frame was another slip of paper. Do not look too long. She sees you as you see her. The longer your gaze lingers, the closer she draws. That night, I covered the portrait with a sheet. But even beneath the fabric, I could still feel it. The pressure of those eyes. Watching, waiting. And when the lamp flickered, I thought just for a moment. I saw the silhouette of a woman standing in the corner of the room, her face hidden in shadow. By now, the pattern was undeniable. Objects were arriving one by one, each connected to the journal, each carrying something, an echo, a fragment of a story that refused to stay silent. But what tied them together? I returned to the pages, tracing the words again and again. There was something in the way the writer had chosen them, a rhythm, almost as if the journal itself was another object. And then I saw it, a faint scribble in the margin of the third page. Something I had missed before. You are not the first, and you will not be the last. The letters seemed freshly inked, as if someone had just written them. In my house. By the third night, my house no longer felt like mine. The objects had claimed it. The watch lay on the table. The music box rested on the shelf. The portrait loomed under its sheet. Each corner of the room seemed to hum with their presence. The air was heavier. Shadows lingered longer than they should have. But the most unsettling part wasn't the objects themselves. It was the sense that they weren't merely here. They were waiting. Waiting for something I hadn't yet understood. I couldn't stay passive any longer. If each object came with a story, then maybe the stories would reveal the truth. I gathered the journal pages, spread them across the desk, and began searching. The internet offered fragments, threads on obscure forums, whispers of haunted relics, collectors who vanished without explanation. But the deeper I dug, the more I stumbled across the same name, Harrowick. It appeared in the margins of an article about a Victorian seance, again in a local newspaper from the 1900s, describing a Mr. Harrowick's traveling cabinet of curiosities. I ordered microfilm archives from the library, my hands shaking as I scrolled through the brittle records. One article in particular stopped me cold. It was dated 1894. Headline: The Harrowick exhibition closes amid unrest. The text described a traveling show that displayed antique objects imbued with history. Visitors swore they felt cold spots, heard voices, even lost track of hours inside the exhibition hall. Several fainted. One never woke. The exhibition closed within months, but the article ended with a chilling note. Harrowick claimed the collection was incomplete and that his work was far from finished. Incomplete, the word echoed in my skull. I laid out the objects on the table. The watch, the music box, the portrait. Each bore that same mark, that labyrinthine crest. I traced its lines with trembling fingers, realizing it wasn't random. The emblem wasn't decorative. It was a design of interlocking doors, symbols of passage, of invitation. The watch was time-halted. The music box was innocence lost. The portrait was a gaze eternal. Different tragedies, different eras, yet somehow tied to the same hand. And then it hit me. They weren't just cursed objects. They were collected memories. Harrowick hadn't been gathering antiques. He had been gathering lives. Each object was a prison, each one holding a fragment of suffering, sealed away like specimens in jars. I returned to the final journal page, the one that had trailed off mid-sentence. This time, I noticed something I hadn't before. When held under the lamp, faint words bled through the parchment, as if written on the reverse side. I angled the page. When the final piece is placed, the collector will walk again. He is not dead. He has only been waiting. The words chilled me. I whispered them aloud, though my throat felt dry, my voice foreign. And in that moment, I swore the object stirred. The music box let out a single warped note, though it was closed. The portrait's sheet shifted as though caught by a non-existent breeze. The watch ticked once, then fell silent. The collection wasn't just history. It was building towards something. And the most terrifying thought of all was that I had been chosen to help complete it. The house was no longer quiet. At first, it was small things, a flicker of the lamp, a draft that came from nowhere, the faint echo of footsteps in the hall when I knew I was alone. But soon, the disturbances grew bolder. The pocket watch, once frozen, now shifted by inches across the table when I turned my back. The music box, unopened, let out fragments of its tune, warped, broken notes that seemed to crawl beneath the skin. And the portrait, even beneath its shroud, I could feel her watching. Sometimes, in the corner of my eye, the sheet bulged forward, as though a face pressed against it from inside. I told myself I was imagining it, but deep down, I knew. This was no trick of the mind. The objects were awake. Sleep became impossible. When I closed my eyes, I dreamed of Harrowick. Or rather, of his shadow. Tall indistinct, his face always veiled in darkness. But his hands were pale and long, moving with the patience of someone who had been arranging shelves for centuries. In my dreams, I followed him through corridors lined with glass cases. Inside each case lay an object I recognized: the watch, the music box, the portrait. But there were others, dozens more. A cracked mask, a child's shoe, a set of rusted keys. Each pulsed faintly, as if something inside them was alive. At the end of the corridor, Harrowick would always turn to me. It wasn't only dreams. The house itself began to betray me. I heard voices in the walls, low, muttering whispers, too faint to understand, yet close enough to feel the vibration against my skin. Sometimes I thought they were calling my name. Shadows moved in unnatural ways, not away from the light, but toward it, stretching, creeping, as though drawn to warmth they no longer remembered. Even the air had changed. Each breath carried a weight, thick and metallic. I tried to fight it, to lock the objects away, to cover the mirrors, to burn the papers, but each attempt only made things worse. The watch reappeared in the center of the table, no matter where I hid it. The music box wound itself, its ballerina twitching violently as the tune played backward. The portrait sheet slipped away in the night, revealing her painted face, now smiling faintly. And then, one evening, as the storm raged outside, something happened that I cannot explain. The watch ticked once. The music box rang out a single note. The portrait's eyes shifted, and then, together, they spoke, not with voices, but with a sound that crawled into my head like claws. He is coming. The words weren't sound. They were a certainty pressed directly into my mind. I staggered back, knocking over a chair, my breath tearing in my throat. And in that instant, I realized there was no turning back. The collector wasn't just watching me. He was using me. That night, the veil thinned. The house shook with a violence that seemed to come from nowhere. The windows rattled. The floorboards groaned. The lights flickered out, plunging me into total blackness. And in the dark, I heard it. The sound of a door. Not one I recognized. Not from this house. A door opening slowly, somewhere just beyond the edge of perception. Cold air rushed in, carrying with it the scent of old wood, smoke, and something older, something foul, like the breath of a tomb. I clutched the journal pages, my only anchor. My hands shook so badly the paper nearly tore, and though I could not see him, I knew Harrowick was there, just beyond the veil, waiting to step through. The night of the breach never ended. The house no longer obeyed the laws of time. The clock on the wall spun forward, then backward, its hands twitching violently. The pocket watch struck 13 again and again, each tick louder than the last. The music box screamed its tune in reverse, sharp notes slicing through the air, and the portrait, the woman's painted lips parted. Her eyes rolled in their sockets, searching, hunting, until they locked on me. "You shouldn't have opened it," she whispered. Her voice was not from the canvas. It came from inside my skull. The room darkened until nothing remained but the sound of breath, my breath, and something else. Deeper, slower, closer. And then I saw him. Harrowick. Not a dream, not a shadow, but standing in the doorway of my home. He was tall, impossibly tall, his frame too thin to be human, draped in a coat that seemed woven from dust and ash. His face was veiled, not by cloth, but by shifting blackness, like smoke that never cleared. Yet, I felt his eyes on me. Heavy, ancient, relentless. He raised his hand, and with it the watch floated into the air, taking violently. The music box spun open on its own, its broken ballerina twitching, arms flailing. The portrait burned with a light from within, the woman's eyes glowing like coals. 3 pieces, Harrowick intoned. Incomplete. I wanted to scream, to beg, to throw it all away. But before I could speak, he leaned closer, the darkness of his face merely touching mine. You are not the first collector, he whispered. You are the next. The words carved into me like blades. The objects around me convulsed. The watch cracked open, gears spilling across the table like insects. The music box's melody grew deafening, so loud, it felt like knives in my ears. The portrait's canvas tore itself, splitting down the middle to reveal only darkness beyond. And then, silence. I blinked. The room was empty. The objects were gone. No watch, no music box, no portrait. Only the faint smell of smoke and a whisper in the distance. Incomplete. I don't know if I ever truly left that night. My house looks the same, but it doesn't feel the same. The air is colder. The shadows stretch farther. Sometimes I catch glimpses of objects that aren't there. A glint of silver, a faint melody, a pair of painted eyes. And the journal pages, they keep changing. New lines appear overnight, written in that same trembling hand. Last night, I found this. The collector does not stop when the story ends. He lingers where he is seen. Have you invited him to? Where he is heard, where he is remembered. Which makes me wonder, now that you've heard his story, have you invited him too? For days, nothing happened. The house was still. The shadows behaved. I almost convinced myself it was over. But then, one night, at exactly 3:13 a.m., the sound returned. Not the music box, not the clock. Something new. The faint scrape of metal against wood. I followed it into the hallway, and there it was, a key lying on the floor, old, rusted, covered in something dark that looked like dried blood. And on its handle, the same crooked mark burned into the portrait's frame. I didn't pick it up. Not at first. But when I turned away, the key wasn't on the floor anymore. It was in my hand. And in that instant, my vision blurred. My walls dissolved. And for a fraction of a second, I wasn't in my house. I was standing in a vast room lined with shelves. Thousands of shelves. And on each one, objects, watches, masks, books, dolls, endless. And in the darkness between the shelves, he waited. Harrowick. His voice followed me back into the real world. The collection grows. The key has chosen you. The door is waiting. When I looked again, the key was gone. But on my skin, across my palm where I had held it, a faint outline of the mark remained, like a brand, like ownership. Since that night, I feel him closer. Not behind the walls, not inside the shadows, but in the spaces between moments. In the silence right after a sound. in the pause right before a word. And sometimes I wonder if you've noticed it too. Because if you heard the scrape, if you saw the mark, if you felt that chill, then maybe the next object in his collection won't be mine. It'll be yours.